In this project, you're going to learn how to create this small little testimonial application. And it's pretty important because now we're going to get into use effect a next React hook, which is going to allow us to get API requests or fetch requests from a mock server. We're going to use the JSON placeholder server. This is right here. And we're going to fetch some data from it. So what are we going to fetch? We're going to fetch some posts. We're going to post them in a card. We're going to fetch some users with their email addresses, and we're also going to fetch comments from those users, depending on their ID, what they said, and what their email address are. So pretty exciting project. We're also going to create a couple of new components. It's going to be the button component, which is going to allow us to insert text in the component, insert icons in the component, and also have its own click event on each of them. Obviously, we're also going to use state in order to change the state of our component. So hope you're excited, and let's get started with the project. Okay, let's get started with our testimonial application. For this, as always, we're going to create our container, our folder for the applications. This is going to be the number 4, so 04, and let's just type in here testimonial-app, actually testimonials, multiples. I'm just going to copy this testimonials, enter, and create a new file, and you're going to use here capital case because this is going to be a component, and also app with capital case. So let's end it with a .jsx and rfc, and we're good to go with our testimonials. And also here, well, I just messed it up all over the place. So testimonials, and also up here. Okay, now let's set it to the app, to the app.js. Down here, testimonials, close it up. We should get here our testimonials. If it is, just a second. Yeah, compiled successful. And let's hit save here. Okay, so there we go. There's our application. Next up, so let's give this a class of container. I'll say margin auto, and we're good to go. Next, let's insert here title. So title component, also import it, import title from title. We're going to go up, components, dash title. Let's use the text as the testimonials app. Okay, testimonials and application, and you should be a string. Okay, next up, we're going to create our second component, which is going to be a button component. So let's go to our components folder right here, create a new file. Let's call it button.jsx. It's rfc, and instead of the divs, we're going to return here a button. Now we're also going to return a couple of classes. For the class name, I'm first of all going to use here curly brackets and then backticks, because I want each and every button that is going to be created to have the class of btn. For the text, we're going to insert here a text, and let's also bring in here text. Okay, and now let's just bring in this component. So we're going to bring in, just going to copy the title and replace this with button. So button, and down here I can now insert my button. So component, button, close it up, and let's just leave it as it is. And now we should pass in here a kind of a default text. So if there is no text, then display, well, let's just say click. But if there is a text, then display that text. So we're going to have it like this, and we can see we have here click. Okay, next up, I want to be able to change the class of the button. So what I'm going to do here, add here variable, $, and we're going to call this btn class. Now we're going to use this as a prop up here. And this just means that if I go back here, and instead of the class, oh, let's also add the text. So text, let's say the very first one will be posts. Okay, so I just change it to post. And let's also add a class. So class, btn class, and I'm going to add here btn info. So the button retains its btn, its main class, but also adds to it btn info class. We could also add btn sm. That's going to make a small button, or LG, going to make a large button. So I'm going to leave it as a regular button, and that's it. Okay, let's go back to the component because we're not done yet. We also want to be able to add some kind of icon in a button. So right before the text here, I'm going to add another variable of icon or another prop, and also pass it up here. It doesn't matter which order you pass them in, icon, but down here it does matter because this is where the icon will appear if you have an icon. So if I would give this button an icon, and for this let's just insert some kind of icon. We already have React icons installed. If not, npm install -react icons, And for the posts, let's just bring in an icon. So disable this. And this time I'm going to bring in an icon from BS. So import. And the name of the icon will be BS fill file and post fill. Post and fill. And this is going to come from React icons and BS because it started with BS. Okay, so let's just add this icon. Now the way you add icons, for example here, I'm going to use the prop of icon. And the way you add icons, well, it's exactly as you would add a normal icon. So open, close, and close up this. And there we go, there's our icon. Okay, one last thing about the button. If you want to keep this shorter, you can add here a default text. So let's just add here a click and delete this. Okay, it's the same thing. As you can see, if I copy this button and remove the text from here, it's just going to say, oh, add it to the class. No, not the class, and there we go, click. Okay, but I want to change the icon from here, so I'm going to copy this icon, the import I mean. I'm going to replace it with FA, user, and alt. And this is going to come from FA. So FA, and also copy this and replace it in here. I'm going to have here a user. Okay, the last icon, let's also add this one. I'm going to copy the button and add here be commented detail. This is going to come from BI and also edit down here. And there we go. We have 3 buttons. Oh, we forgot to add the text. So text will be for this one, users, and for, let me just copy this. For the last button is going to be comments. Comments. And there we go. So we have our 3 buttons. If you wish to add a bit more space between them, then you can just go into the icon and add a class name of margin right. Let's say 1, and so add a bit of a margin to it. But I'm going to leave this up to you. Okay, the last thing I want to add to the buttons is a click event. Basically, if I click on one of the buttons, then something should happen. Now let's open up the console. The console. There's a console. Let's also delete everything that is in there. We might have some errors from previous things. And now let's add here a, well, right after the class name, a on click. And we're going to pass it this. And I'm going to pass it on as on and click. And I'm going to add it up here as a prop. So on click. Okay. So if you're using this on click, then it's going to be passed in as a prop into the button. And here it should do something. So for example, if I would create a function, a const handle click. And let's just pass in here console log my click. Oh, you should be an error function. What are you doing, buddy? Okay, so we can already pass this handle click a button. Let's pass it here at the end. So on click, just handle this on click. Remember, this is a component. It's not actually a button. This component returns a button, and we're passing down this function into that button. Okay. So if I would click the very first button, then it's going to handle my click, and I can do this to all of my buttons. So paste this in here and paste it in here to the very last one. So let's just change, let's leave it at this. So click, click, and clicks. Okay. So yeah, we're done with this part. Now let's move on to using some effects and also use state. Okay, now we got our buttons done. Let me just close up the console and let's get started by adding here a subtitle. So the subtitle, copy the title component. We're going to add it down here, and instead of text, let's type in here, select from above. And after the title, let's add here, let's actually add to this a class. So we're going to say that the class says, we're going to add multiple classes, is going to be subtitle. So within a string, subtitle, there we go. This makes it smaller. And then we could also add a color to the subtitle. We're going to add a text of primary. Okay. Now, why do we want to select from above? Because if I will click one of these buttons, it should either display posts, users, or comments. And this will be displayed from this, this mock server. Now, this is the JSON server. And from here, you can get mock data. As you can see here, we're going to use this as a fetch request. And we're going to use this fetch request within a use state, actually within a use effect. But first, let me get use state. So above here, comma, and we're going to use state and also comma use effect. Now I'm also going to delete, or actually just comment out this. And let's get started by assigning here const, and we're going to assign this to testimonials, and then comma set testimonials. Okay, and we're going to assign this to use state. Okay, so our testimonials will be displayed down here after the title. So first, let me just go here. Yeah, we're missing handle click, I know. Going to just select this everywhere. So select the first, command D and D, and let's delete it for now. Okay, this is going to yell at me, but let's just add, actually, empty string. Yeah, let's just add an empty string, so it doesn't yell at us anymore, because it's missing that that function that we created. Okay, so instead of the title here, some select from above, I actually want to display the testimonial that are selected. So either it's a post, a user, or comments. Now we are going to pass in here, instead of the text, we're going to pass in a question first. So if testimonials exist, then, so if they don't exist, then display select from above. But if they do exist, then display the testimonials. So pretty simple. Now, where are these testimonials coming from? They're going to come from another state. Basically, when we're going to set a testimonial, so post, user, or comment, it's going to appear here. So we're going to use our set testimonials. We're going to go down here into each of the buttons. And let's just say that if I click on this button, then, oops. So if I click on posts, then I'm going to pass in here a arrow function. And this arrow function will set testimonials to the string of posts. Okay. The next one, so basically if I click on posts, it's going to change this to posts. So I know that I just clicked on posts. The next one, which is going to be users, are going to be changed to users. And the very last one, obviously, is going to be changed to comments. So copy, paste it in here, and comments. Okay, so if I click through here, we're going to see users, comments, posts, so far and so on. If there's nothing selected, then it prompts me to select something. Now, next step is to get some data. And for this, we're going to use effect. So let's use here use effect. The use effect has a callback function, an anonymous function, which is going to call whatever is passed in here and set it at the beginning of the application. So as soon as the application loads, it's going to do this. So for this, we're going to go to the JSON server. And as always, we're going to have all of the links in the resource portion of the course. So just copy this, paste it in here, and instead of to-dos, right after the /, we're going to pass in here, so this should be in, so not a string, we're going to replace the string with template literals, and we're going to pass in here the variable of testimonials, or the state of testimonials. Now remember, when we're clicking through the state, so when we're clicking through these buttons, we're resetting the state to either comment, post, user, and so far and so on. And this means that also within here, after the /, it's going to be instead of posts, or instead of to-dos, as you saw there, as you saw here, instead of to-dos, we're going to have users or posts or comments. Now the response is going to come in, is going to be turned into JSON data, and then we're not going to console log that JSON data, but we're going to create another variable. We're going to create another state. So let me just copy this and replace this testimonials with items, and this should be a capital I. Now we're fetching some kind of data, so we're fetching these items, and we're going to set those items down here as JSON data, and each time our testimonials change, then the data, so on each press of this button, the data will refresh, will change this, and this function will run again. So as soon as testimonials changes, this function will run again. But because at the beginning it's set to nothing, well, it's not going to display anything. Okay, so where should we display something? Well, we're going to go down after our title, in our case subtitle, and we're going to display here, well, if there are any items, because we're setting that up there to items, then do nothing. But if there are any kind of items, then we're going to take those items and we're going to loop over them using a map method. Now a map returns a new array, so we're going to take each item from that array, we're going to pass it through another callback function, and within here we're going to implicitly return now. So what should we return? Well, we're going to return a card. So let's start out by creating a div with the class of card, and you can change this if you want. Card primary. Wait, why isn't Emmet working? So I'm returning here, that's closing up there, and that's closing up here. That's so strange. Div extremely strange. Nevertheless, let's return a div, class name of card and card primary, and also let's add a margin to the bottom of 2. It's going to close this up here and then close up the div tag. And something is wrong, so I'm returning that item map item, and in here should be the item that I'm returning. So what is your problem, Bob? Okay, I'm outside this closing here. Oh yeah, and you should be here. Okay, so as you can see, returning items for each of those posts. Now there are a lot of posts, so we're returning items. If I return comments, then again I'm returning items, and so on and so on. Now from those items we can select different things. If you take a look at this server, for example in posts, if you click on posts, you'll see you have a user ID, you have an ID, you have a title, you have a body. So basically we can select each one of them. If I want to select item.id, then I'm going to get their IDs. Wait just a second, they should be in curly brackets. So I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so on. I want to get title, then I'm going to get their title. These are just lorem ipsum titles. And if I go to posts or users, there's nothing, comments, there's nothing, but only posts. So basically we're returning from this data. If we're clicking on user, then we're returning users. And if we go to users, so let me just click here on back, well, forward, back. If you go to users, so instead of posts, we're passing in users. You can get the user ID, you can get a user name. So let's try a name. And if I'm on post, then I'm going to get nothing. But if I go to users, I'm going to get some kind of generated names. Okay, so let's create here some kind of nice looking data. And one last thing, when you're using a map method, you should always assign a key. So in our case, to this main div, which is a card, I'm also going to add the key property. And for the key, I'm going to set the item.id. Okay, so it needs some kind of key. Now I'm going to use this item.name, because you can see here, in case of a name, because of a post, we don't have any kind of name. So if there is no name, I also don't want to display anything. So basically we're going to say if there is a name, then return a h2. I'm just going to do it this way. Then return an h2 with a class name of card-header. And in here, I'm going to have the item.name. Okay, so in posts, we're not going to get anything, but in users, we're going to get this. In comments, we're going to get this because someone did comment it. Next, after the name, let's add a class of card-body, also going to be a div. And within here, we're going to get h, let's add an h4, return item.title. Then let's copy this, let's change it to a paragraph tag. Instead of item.body, which is going to be the post itself, is this. So if you're on post, you're going to get this and this. If you're on users, you're going to get the user name. And let's also add their email addresses just for fun. So if the item, you know what, I'm going to copy this. It's almost the same thing. So if there is an item, and I'm going to replace this with email, then I'm going to return that item email. But I'm going to return it in a small tag, and this small tag would have the class of card footer instead of header. Okay, as you can see, each card will have now in their footer the email address. Now, if you click through them, you're going to see your posts, your users, and your comments. And the comments going to also have the text in the middle. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this project. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned a lot. Let's click through it. You just see how use effect works. Basically, it loads when the application loads. So if I would reload, because it's set to absolutely nothing, I also need to set it to an empty string. So because it's set to nothing, it's not going to show. Let's just reload it again. Because it's set to nothing, it's not going to show any kind of data. Down here we have this question. If there isn't any data, then just do nothing. But if there is some data, then loop through that data, return each item of that array or object. Actually, it's an object. And then within some basic styling, return from that item a ID as a key, name if there is a name, title, body, email, and so on and so on. And I would suggest that you play around with this JSON mock data. Is JSON placeholder. If you search for JSON placeholder, you will end up on this page. But as I said, it's also in the Testimonial resources. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the project. Thank you very much and hope you learned a lot.